Welcome to the Lowdown Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley, bam! And joining me today is someone who I have had a lot of interaction with over the years on LinkedIn. In fact, he is the 184th most followed mortgage professional on the platform. Longtime mortgage pro who can shred a sweet ukulele tune here and there. Stephen Moye, thanks for joining the Lowdown. It is a pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and it's nice to be a part of it. So thank you
Absolutely.
for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, I know this episode has been a long time coming. We've talked a little bit in the DMs on this. We've been in touch for years and collaborated on a thing or two here and there. You've joined some of the loco calls, all this stuff. And one of the things that we discussed in February, I believe it was the subject of creativity and how you noticed that when you were more creative, your business benefited. And I was really kind of hoping to dive into that topic a little bit today. But before we jump in, would you mind just sharing with the Lowdown community a little bit about yourself, your background, all that, and whatever you feel the audience needs to know about you to get the essence of Stephen?
I've been originating loans since 1996, and I fell into the business because when I was in college, I was in a band, and I was planning on being a high school social science teacher. And a couple of the guys in the band ended up in the mortgage business, and when I saw how much they were making, I was like, why not me?
Yeah,
And so
right.
what was interesting was I got hired. It was a brand new branch, and I had a really good branch manager who we were really close, and he really leaned into me, and I took to it pretty naturally. And I think part of it is that the time working in the grocery store helped me build an empathy and an understanding for the type of people that were going to be needing loans. And so when I was hired, I ended up being the number two guy in the company after my first year. And the joke was that I went from Ralph's to Rich's because the grocery store that I was working at was called Ralph's. So that was the thing, though. But what I really realized is with mortgages is that when I was hired, I was hired along with a bunch of guys who had MBAs and were business professionals. And um, I was doing more production on them, and I think part of it is that sometimes people forget that mortgages, unlike each business, is the liberal arts of finance. I think sometimes people don't. If you're someone who's really into numbers, mortgages are more about the narrative. It's more about the storytelling, and so. It's important that you understand the numbers and you can explain annual percentage rate and all of that, but it's really more important that you're sharing, what can become because of the wealth generating aspects of, buying a house and how, in this country there is more than other countries, home ownership is considered an ideal. And, we have a system, but even like a culture that is really for that. And a good loan officer needs to be able to tell a story. And then also, anyone who's written creative letters of explanation knows that sometimes you need creativity on that end. I've always said there's two people that, if there's a consumers to it, in a mortgage, there's often two consumers. There's the borrower who wants money, and then there's the underwriter who has to find a way to justify doing the loan if it's on the margins or requires a. So we're advocates, sometimes we're storytellers, and I think that that's something that people don't realize what we do. But the people that I've liked that I've really connected with in the industry all kind of get off on that. Like that, that part is the part that they just like, yeah. And
Well, I think it's such a great point that you bring up. Just like this morning, finished reading the book Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. And basically the concept of the book is about getting ideas to stick, and they go through a number of different chapters, and the final is really about storytelling. And ultimately that's the penultimate way to get an idea to stick, is to tell the story. And when you talk about, yes, you can walk someone through the numbers and you can kind of show them this is your monthly payment and the impact of that. But when you can relate it in a way to them that helps them see, yes, but you're also going to be able to host family dinners here, and you're going to have a backyard for your dog, and you're going to be able to, this is where you're going to create all these memories, and these great things are going to happen, and you start to just expand on what a house really means to someone. I feel like that's what really sticks. The numbers are important, but they're a part of the story. So I love that you call that out. Anyone who I think in that's in this industry doing this job, if they go through some sort of self education or training or whatnot, as far as to become a great storyteller, I can see that as being a huge benefit to their business. But
Well,
anyway,
especially with how the industry, the emphasis on personal branding and how we're supposed to, build awareness of us, is through narrative. And you know, the challenging thing with the mortgage industry is that it's not visual. Like, realtors have an advantage in this because, a house is a very visual thing. But with mortgages, it's a little bit more. We're selling more of an idea, and we're having to make it resonate in their heads. And it's exciting, and it makes it fun. And I think it's one of the things that I don't think consumers understand how much we how important that is. Whether it's I had to request an exception from an investor yesterday, and it was a big one. I think we'll hear back today, but we were able to tie in a letter of explanation, legitimate, not a made up one, so that it made sense. Storytelling is very good, and the technology that we have now helps us.
right, sure, sure. So, and then just thinking about, like, because I think the example I provided was more about what a realtor might say, right, in terms of the memories of the home. And on the financial side, it's kind of, telling the story of the family that was able to tap into their equity to pay off college for their kid. Or,
Well, like this weekend, I took a call on Sunday, and it was these people I've been working with for a while, and they had always been in this price range. They qualified for more, but a house down in their dream neighborhood came available, and I kind of said, sometimes it's better to buy your second home first, because if you buy something small, you got 4 kids, you're going to outgrow it really quickly, and the benefits that you make in terms of equity appreciation aren't going to be aren't going to be as good in 2 to 3 years as they might be in something you could live in for 17 to 20 years. And so the house that you're going to end up having to buy 3 years from now is going to be that much more expensive, but you won't have the equity, the likelihood of you getting the equity on the small house to make the numbers work better. So when I explained it in that terms, they put an offer in, and we hope to hear.
sure, yeah, absolutely.
And the realtor was very happy that I said that.
I bet. So how are you tapping into this creative side? I mean, have you gone through any formal training? Is it just something that's come natural to you? You mentioned you were in a band, so I imagine you're kind of artistic by nature. But how do you tap into that?
Well, so I think, like, you know when you're in sales, you know, I think it's important to be current, and you need to be receptive. One of the best explanations I've ever saw about the creative process was the Hulu documentary with Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney, and where they go back and they play the original tips, and he would mix it down so you could just hear the bass. They would explain, like, basically where a song for basically 10 years, everything that Paul McCartney was doing was geared towards where's the next song coming from. So he was so locked in that he was just really receptive for the creative process. And I think it's important to do that. And one of the things that kind of helped me get some balance in the in my business is, for me, I've always been more successful with the and felt better about my origination when I had like a creative side. So in the early 2010s, I was mentoring a group of middle schoolers on a band at the church that my wife was working to. And when your wife works at a church, it's buy one get one free. So I learned more about leadership through the 3 years that I was running the band, and they were phenomenal. Like if there was ever like a competition for middle school worship team, like they if there's the Netflix show, but they were phenomenal. But learning how to manage the personalities of middle school girls was extremely helpful for a path that I took later later in my career when Raquel came over to New American Funny, Raquel Boras. We started, just the whole idea of doing social media and kind of finding that voice. And then, I had the ukulele that I would just screw around in, and I started just doing ukulele songs. That ended up, part of the thing for me is I don't mind expressing myself, but I don't want it to take my job that pays, unless one of these songs gets licensed, is my job that pays is doing mortgages. So if I'm writing a song, it better take less than 30 minutes. If something's, we're not writing Stairway to Heaven, we're not going to do some big long thing. It doesn't work. So the thing is that what's great about the ukulele, it's four strings, and I'm limited. And if I was playing guitar, somebody would be like, "Hey, I noticed you used that chord shape. That's a really awkward chord." I would get some guitar stuff. But because it's a ukulele and it's something that doesn't take, I mean, the craft is there, but I'm not spending a lot. If something doesn't come to me quickly, I put it aside. With the ukulele, it doesn't detract, and hopefully it gives a sense of what people can expect. What's helped me with clients is if they Google me and they see that, they have a better expectation of the dad jokes, the dry humor, and kind of the goofy sensibility. So it makes them more open on that. And so that part, I find that when I'm really kind of, both seem to come together really well. In February, I was on a hot streak of writing, and then I also had a hot streak of origination, and my production just kind of took off. And I think it's like when you're you know the women are always interested when you have someone you're really into. Like it's always kind of feast or famine, and that's how it kind of works.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point though about just the creative process in general because, I consider myself to be a creative person and that can be a curse and a blessing and a curse, right? And when it's a curse, it sucks because like you're stuck and you feel, like you're just in this log jam, right? Like you've got this brain freeze, you can't get out of it and but when the ideas are free flowing and you're out of that and you're just in like the creative flow, there is definitely something magical about that. And I've always been a believer that once you're in that flow, to stay in it as long as you possibly can until you just run out. And because, yeah, there is. I agree with you, or I'm not surprised that you saw that correlation between the creativity and being on the hot streak with the songwriting, and then seeing that in your production. Because I feel like if that's sort of your personality and it's a part of you, then that's a confidence boost. Like you feel like you're finally kind of more your genuine self at that time, or at least that's how I feel. I don't know if you.
I agree, but I also think though, like anything else, like you can get on a hot streak with sales, but the fact is that you still have to do. You have to. It doesn't work if you're not disciplined. So literally, like with work, I'm very I'm very disciplined about how I structure my day. And with the creative stuff, when that happens, I'm very, even though like I purposely kind of have held off on some of the songs, on posting some of the songs, just because I'd had such a stretch, and I didn't want to be like pigeonholed. I wanted to make sure that, um, wanted to make sure that that next one was good. But I'm still working on that, and it's the same thing. Um, you know, I'm still calling my database 30 calls I have to make today, just to previous clients. And I'm still doing that, even though it's really sunny outside in San Diego and there are other things. I'm still going to have those disciplines because if you're not present for that, then the other stuff's not going to be there. Very rarely, inspiration comes with like discipline and work, and you just have to be kind of prepared for it. You also have to be a useful collaborator. So in the Loco group, there was a woman, Elizabeth Turo, who did a wonderful post about her week, worries and wins. That was the phrase that came out of worries and wins. And so I'm like, okay, there's a song there. So I like literally I'm on my way to the gym and the it like the chorus like came like that. So then like instead of like reading instead of reading Bloomberg or whatever I do on the treadmill in the morning, I was writing lyrics and I had a verse and a lyric, so I had a structure. Then I'm thinking, okay, well, what kind of music would work for this? And for some reason I kind of thought, like Mary Chapin Carpenter, bouncy 90s country, because that would be something that Elizabeth would like. Like it wouldn't. It just I'd never spoken with her other than the thing. But I think, okay, what would that growing up in Colorado, I'm not necessarily, okay, what would so I was trying to think, okay, something that would work, that would work like with what her thing was because I wanted the post was so great I wanted to pay honor to it. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, so then the first verse in the chorus, and I put it into Chat GTP with a few notes, and it helped me complete it. Then I recorded it, but I called her first to say, hey, I you don't know me except from Loco, and obviously this call is a reason that's called Loco in the first place. But I wrote a song about your thing, and I want you to hear it because I want your blessing, and I'm going to be posting it and tagging you on that. And I was it came from that, but I didn't want to do it in a way like, oh, I'm stealing your good idea. I wanted to pay homage because it was her post was far. I was very happy with the song, but her post was way better than the song that I wrote. Like
Yeah.
that's how good a post it was.
Well, but
And
so I love the point you make though about having to stay disciplined, over motivation, and that within the process of that discipline, the inspiration springs eternal, right? Like we can get so caught up in our own desires to try and like go through the creative process that we forget to just live life, and that's where all the real
right.
inspiration is.
Or
And
you
so
get
staying
this,
disciplined to the work is what, eventually
or
causes
you
it.
get the I can't do it because it's never gonna be good. It's got to be the perfect song. So one of the things though is I know that if I wanted to write I have enough of an audience that if I wanted to write a mortgage related song and I rhymed home with loan, I could get people that liked it on LinkedIn. But it's the same thing. Like a lot of times you get people who will write like a Christian song and they just substitute the word Jesus for baby. And the thing is when I was working with the middle schoolers, I was always like, it does not plead your Lord and Savior to suck. Like, it's like, the God I know doesn't want someone writing a song about him that sucks. But the thing though is that, so, like, I don't want to, if I don't write a song like for other mortgage professionals, if I'm doing it, I want to write it so that my songwriting friends will be like, okay, that's pretty good. Because the work has to stand on its own for what it is, which is just a ukulele song done in half an hour regarding mortgage related topics that I may or may not find funny. But it's the same thing like with but at the end of the day, we're here, the whole challenge like with personal branding and stuff is that at the end of the day, we're not here to be pundits of like expertise in doing mortgages doesn't make me qualified to discuss, of South Asian oil rights. But there's a lot of, and so I don't use my platform as a, you know, like it still has to stick about mortgages. So I'm not going to write, that's always the key. Everything has to come back to mortgages in those platforms, because otherwise, what are we doing here?
Yeah, yeah. So, do you find benefit though in having that outlet? Like,
Yeah.
and if someone's kind of searching for that right now, like how could someone, or how would you recommend someone kind of find that creative outlet, and how can they tie that into what they're doing so they can see some of that benefit just, by tapping into that side of their brain?
So here's the challenge I had. I always knew that I stayed away from like posting reels and stuff because like I knew that the Steve that's here, I always had a difficulty translating into like talking to the camera felt awkward. And you know that there's kind of a trope with Instagram. Hi guys, this is my first, I want to break out of my comfort zone. Or they do they just do like the talk about the loan programs. And the fact is that people will use you not because of a loan program, but because they know, like, and trust you. And that's where, if you like dry humor, dad jokes, and ukulele, I'm your guy. But but the thing though is that it's important to be like for me, like the ukulele was like a crutch for me. It was a way to post something in a way that made me more comfortable. Or having the stuff that Raquel and I did was a good gateway to that because I had someone to kind of play off of. And so I think sometimes it's difficult to find your voice, and you just have to say, okay, you know, what is the person I want people to see that's close enough to real, but not so real that it's going to freak people out.
Right.
Or and so I just kind of lucked into to finding that, but it took me a long time. There was a discipline and work to finding out something that I was comfortable with that I could build with.
Sure, yeah. And so I'm just curious, and we've talked a lot about, the industry, but as far as clients go, I know you mentioned if they research you, they'll find those things and borrowers or referral partners, but how is that playing to that audience? I mean, are they finding you, the authentic part of you, or that side of you, and is it attracting kind of like-minded individuals, or what's been the response from that side?
I think it's good. So we currently one of the reasons why I haven't posted a video in a month is our company. I'm adapting to our new CRM, which is Bonzo. And so what I'm doing is I'm incorporating some of the ukulele stuff so that when I meet certain milestones, there'll be like a ukulele song and kind of lean into that. And
Yeah,
then
love that.
also the companies, some of the people in the company have reached out to me for to utilize some of that for, so I've written a lot of songs about some of the niche programs we have that the company's been wanting to use. So I've been doing that, and then but with Bonzo, the idea is that I'll have a prepared video as we sit, and a different song for each as we hit certain milestones, like when you're approved and stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to do something if there's no ukulele song that's like we can't do your loan or
To soften the blow. Well, I think that's great because for me, like I've held the belief for a long time that there should be a school out there that has a curriculum that is entirely song based. I feel like people learn really well through
well,
song. There's so many tunes you can remember, and
and see
the jargon,
multiplication rock.
just our industry is so very specific to terminology that a lot of people don't understand. So if you can put it in song, then maybe they can hum along to it and
Well,
it'll stick in their head, and it just makes it, a more relatable thing.
Well, exactly, like Schoolhouse Rock that they had in the 70s and the 80s, though, yeah, maybe there's one, APR, APR. Maybe I know what I'm going to be doing for the next half an hour after we
There
get
you
off
go.
this call. I do think though that there is, since the industry, the whole mortgage influencer thing, but you know, there is a definite need for edutainment and I think that the best and the brightest can do that. And there's so many tools available to kind of pass the chasm and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe that's my next thing. I think schoolhouse. We're talking about doing so much for financial education that maybe that's my next my next act.
Mortgage Rocks with Stephen Moye.
Exactly. That'd be great. Yeah, I think so.
There we go, man. Well, good deal. Well, let's wrap it up there, man. I really appreciate you joining the podcast, having this conversation. I'm in agreement with you that creativity it's kind of a superpower, and it's something that we all have. It's just a matter of unlocking it and tapping into it and finding ways to use it to our advantage, to create momentum and sort of give us that little extra, oomph that sometimes we're missing.
Right.
Discipline will always trump motivation. Motivation is, it's weak. It comes and goes, and it's unreliable. But discipline is, if we lock into it, that's where inspiration springs. And so without that, it's really hard to tap into your creative side. But I appreciate the conversation, Stephen. And any parting words for our guests today?
No, I've enjoyed being here, and thank you so much. And let's hope rates go down.
Hey, we can all hope. All right, man. Thanks for joining the lowdown. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a great day.